So it's lesson 7, and today we're going to look at authentication and authorization in a .NET application. So I want to kind of give you an overview of how this works from a visual perspective. So over the years, the ASP.NET, there's kind of been an evolution. Microsoft's been through many different versions of an authentication library. The one that we're going to use is a framework called ASP.NET Identity, and it's now in its second major version. So this is kind of how it works. You know, so far we just have this part. We've got a browser, and we've got our web server running our application. I'll just maybe get if you don't have your music store opened up in Visual Studio, you want to open that up. And we'll start it without the debugger just so that our site loads. Again, if you don't have a working copy, you can take my GitHub repository, download it, open it up in Visual Studio. Everybody should have a copy of it, whether it's your own or whether you're taking mine off of GitHub. Now, one thing we did when we set up our project, you might remember, I know it was a while ago, but by default, when we set up a new solution in Visual Studio, we get an authentication option. It defaults to no authentication, meaning everything's public. But we changed that when we set up our solution. We changed it and we picked the individual user account option. And when we did that, it actually generated these links, which we haven't used yet, but they actually do work. It builds us a register and a login page, and notice these are inside of the account folder. So if we open up our solution, so we didn't build these, Visual Studio did. We go into account. If we enable that individual user accounts, it actually builds all these views. So register, login, forget password, generates all this stuff for us. So we're going to be able to use those, and we're going to use this framework that basically sits in between our .NET application and our database. And then it also has libraries for third-party authentication, so things like Facebook, Google, Twitter, LinkedIn, Microsoft accounts. We're going to enable those as well, which is great because all this code is basically already here. We don't have to write any of the code. We just kind of have to plug our application into it, which works great. So I'm just going to open up. We'll have a quick look at our database for a minute. I'll just expand here my table structure. Now, if you can see, look at your database, yours is going to be different than mine, right? Even though we all generated our database from the same script. If you look at the list of tables in your music store database, what do you see that's different in my version from the list you probably have in your own? How many tables are in your database? You've got 6. So which tables do you see here that you don't have in yours? Right, all the tables so we've got roles, claims, logins, roles, and users. So one of the great things about this ASP.NET Identity package is it automatically, and here's the schema for what the tables look like, it will automatically generate all of the tables we need for user management. We don't have to build our own. So the way that this will work, all you have to do, you don't have to do anything in your database, go to your register link and create an account for yourself. Now, we're going to need this account, so my suggestion is don't forget the password. Put the password in a file somewhere. Maybe the same file where you put your database credentials. Put in the account you're going to create for yourself. If you're using my repository from GitHub, well, you'll be connecting to my database. That's fine. I don't care if you create a login in my database. That's not a problem. So once you fill out the form, and click register, I'll create a new account here. Notice also this package will enforce strong password rules. It wants a 6-character password. It's not going to let me sign up without one. So once I register, if you go back here and refresh your list of tables, you should now have those 5 ASP.NET tables added to your database automatically. So we don't have to build these manually. The package will take care of it. It says as soon as a user tries to register, it will look for these tables, and if they don't exist, the package generates them and then inserts the user. So the main users table is this one, this ASP.NET users table. Which I may have to connect through Management Studio, and we can have a look at what's in there. Just open it up here. So we can look at the users table and see what that package gives us. So the ID is this sort of long hashed string. It hashes the password and also salts it with this security stamp. So even if 2 people put in the same password, the actual value that gets stored is going to be different. Each one will be stored uniquely. It's got a field for phone number. It has things like 2-factor authentication, and also we can lock the accounts out. For example, if there's a certain number of invalid logins. Alex?
I know it's kind of not this class, but more or less in big picture, how does it work? It like randomizes the passwords and at the same time is able to read them.
It does that using the hashing out, the stamp algorithm. That's like a salt value. So it stores the salt value. So even if you and I both register with the exact same password, we're each going to get a unique security stamp. And this value is used in hashing each of our passwords. So without storing this information, it can't validate password. It's got to store whatever salt value is used when it did the password hashing.
So that's the salt value like randomly?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's an algorithm inside the code that will do it.
Okay.
So we won't see anything in any of the other tables right now. We've just added to the ASP.NET user. So that's where our accounts go. And we can customize that table if we want to store things like addresses or other information about our users. We can just add columns to this table. And then we've got that information as well. So now I should be able to log in with my new account. We're going to need this account each week. So as I said, probably a good idea to put, because the password is not stored in plain text, we can't see the password, probably a good idea to put it in a text file. So actually, I'm going to open up my music store. I created this little access text file with my database credentials. I'm going to put in my user account here too. Next week, when I come back to class, I'll remember the login that I built.
Register login said that Visual Studio created it on its own.
Yep. When we set up our project and chose individual user accounts, it automatically built this entire folder.
I don't have an option to register.
Do you have this inside of views? Do you have this folder called account? So expand your views folder.
No.
So probably when you set the project up, so you can add all this stuff to your existing project. It's actually easier to make a new project and then import your existing work into it. So here's the option. This is what it looks like, Ryan. So when you create a new project, and you pick web, here, if you say no, it defaults to no authentication, so it doesn't include any of the packages or any of the views. If you click change and individual user accounts, we need to enable that option in order to get all that stuff generated. So you may want to create a new solution with that option and then import all the files we've already created.
Right.
Is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, because I even tried pulling yours from GitHub. It said that there were build errors, so couldn't even.
Okay, so try creating a new one. Now, I'm not quite sure. Normally, when we click login, okay, let's see what's going on here. So I'm going to open up our account. And it will also build an account model and an account controller for us. What should be happening is it should be changing our navigation when I log in to include a welcome message. Is that working for anybody? When you log in, it says welcome at the top. Yeah, it says hello, and register and login disappear, don't they?
Yeah, login is turned into log off.
Right. May have to create a new user account and see what's going on. Interesting. Okay, a few of you are using my database. That's fine. I'll try a different account. Okay, so my accounts are being created. We'll have a look and see what's going on, else is going on in our database. Maybe there's something else we need to do. Though I don't think so. I'm going to look, so we have a table for different roles, which we'll use in a bit. And then we can put users in roles. So we can have, for example, a customer role or an administrator role. Right now, these tables are empty. Well, this is where our debugger is handy. I'm going to have to run it and see why my login doesn't want to work. I'll try logging in one more time. So here's where our debugger is handy. I'll just put in a breakpoint. So it's going to try to sign me in. And we'll see what happens. It says I'm signed in successfully, so that's good. It redirects me to the home page. Okay, so seem to be having an issue in Firefox for some reason. I'm not sure why. So here's our result. Once I log in my header, my register and login links disappear, and I get a hello message with my username and log off appearing. Okay? So all this is built into the package. We didn't have to do anything to make this work. All we had to do is create an account and log in, which is awesome. So once I hit log off, notice my navigation immediately changes. No longer knows who I am. I'm anonymous, and I get register and login coming back. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to take our store manager that we built. Right now, all these pages are public, right? I'm logged out, but I can still go into my store manager and I can make any changes. I could add albums, I could change the price, I could delete everything from the store if I want. So we want our store manager section of the site to be private. But a user, first we're going to make it so you have to log in. And then later we're going to change it so not only do you have to log in, but you have to be in it logged in with an administrator account. If you're a customer, you can't go in and change the products in the store. You can shop and you can create an account, but you can't manage the product catalog. So this is super easy in ASP.NET. Just stop my debugger here. Turn my server back on. So all we have to do is let's open up our store manager controller. So inside of controllers, store manager. If we want to secure all of the methods in this controller, right here at the top on line, on mine it's line 13. If we, above this, we can add a little declaration that says, simply says, authorize. That's it. If we build the site, now anonymous users cannot access any of the store manager pages. They're going to be sent to the login page automatically. So this just goes above the declaration of our controller class. So all of the methods in this class require the user to be authenticated. So we can build. And now try your store manager link again. Actually, you probably have to log out if you're still logged in. Click your log off link in your nav bar. So I'm already, you can tell I'm anonymous, right? Because I've got the login link. My username doesn't show. So now if I go to my store manager index page, it locks me out and it sends me to the login page. And we can even see from the URL, we can see what page I tried to access. I tried to access the store manager index view. If we try any of the other links here, if I go to create or edit, right? In every case now, I'm locked out of any one of those actions. So super easy. I mean, it was fairly easy in PHP. We created a little include file that checked the session for a valid user and redirected. This is even easier. Just put the word authorize. Done.
How do we authorize that?
Okay, we're going to do that next. Sorry, we'll get to that in a minute. Because, yeah, we are going to have different kinds of users in the store. So right now, if we log in now, we should be able to once again access all of the pages in the store manager section. So now we're logged in. We'll try the index view. We can create a new. So all of our views work again once we're logged in. So at this point, it doesn't care about our role. It's simply dealing with authentication. Do we know who the person is? Yes or no? If they have an account, they can get in. If they don't have an account or they haven't logged in, they're locked out. So Alex, we'll come to that in a minute. That's the authorization piece. So authentication is simply about identity. Who We want to do one other thing, though. It's good that we've made most of these pages private, except our details page. What if we want this one to be public, right? Because the user can't change anything here. They just want to see the album. So we might use this as part of our store. There's no ability to change, edit, delete anything here. So we want all of the store manager pages to be private, except this one. And maybe we'd remove those links. So an anonymous user should be able to get that one. So if this secures the entire controller and all the methods inside, what do you suppose we could do so that the details page is public and all the rest of them are private?
Well, the easiest or the earliest ways to just authorize only before the ones that we want to block.
Okay, so that would be one option, is go into all of like the index method.
Yeah, and is there a
And
way to say tell ASP.NET thing unauthorized?
There is.
Yeah, okay.
So above our details method, we have an allow anonymous declaration. So even though the controller as a whole requires authentication, this particular method doesn't. Anonymous users are allowed to access just this one. So we can, in effect, override the authorization that we're declaring at the top. Now, we could also do it the opposite. Let's say we have 10 methods in the controller, and 9 of them should be public. In that case, we could just declare authorize above the 1 method or 2 methods that should be private. So we can do it either way. So if we add this allow anonymous just above our details method, then we should be locked out from all of the views except the details view. So we'll just add that decorator to our details method, build the solution, and now we can try this out and make sure that it works too. It should. Once this works, then Alex will come to the authorization piece, which is also relatively simple. So I'm anonymous right now. I'm not logged in. You can see from the navigation, we're not logged in. So if I try to go to the store manager index, it just keeps me on login, right? I can't load the index view. However, I can load I go to store manager /details/ I can try an album ID with, whoops, that's not right. Sorry, I better log in and get the proper URL. Here's how we can test it. Sorry. Before I log out, I'm going to grab this URL. So it's /store manager /details/387. That's one of the album IDs. So I'm going to log out. I'm going to try going back to that URL. I'm anonymous. My username isn't in the header. So the details view I can load because we're allowing anonymous users into this one view. If I try to go back to my store manager index, though, it takes me to login. So all of the views in the store manager are private except for details. If I click on the edit link, same thing. It won't let me in. So this is a really simple way for us to manage which pages are public and which pages require users to log in. So we declared this authorize at the top because we want it to be global for all the methods except the one we've overridden. Or we could apply authorize to any individual methods instead. Let's say we have 10 methods and 5 of them are private and 5 are public. We would just declare authorize above the 5 private methods.
For example, if you go to one album, you not log in.
Yep. Okay, so I'm not logged in, but I'm in.
For example, I don't want it to show them. Yeah, anonymous user added back to links button. What can I?
So this stuff should only show up. Great question. Okay. Let's do that. So let's open up our store manager details view. And let's add an if statement there that those links only show up when you're logged in. That's what you mean, Daniel, right? Okay. So let's open up that view. So inside of views, store manager, and details. So we haven't made any changes to this. This is just what the scaffolding generates for us. So down here at the bottom, we've got this little section, right, with our edit and details links. So what we can do is this. Maybe above our paragraph tags here. So actually, so we could say if the user.identity is authenticated. So this is a built-in method we can use that will tell us if the current user is logged in or anonymous. Whoops. Whoops, sorry, no brackets there. So is authenticated will return a true or false. So if is authenticated returns true, show those links. Otherwise, don't display them. So we can just save that. So now I'm anonymous, right? You can see from the header I'm not logged in. Links go away. As soon as we log in, go back to the details view on any album, links come back. So that's the easy way in our views. if we want to show or hide or change things in the view, depending on whether the user is logged in or not, we can just check that user identity dot is authenticated. Okay, we have access to other things as well, like we have the username, user.identity.name. That's how it's printing the email address in the navigation bar. If we look at, just one sec. So here's that section of our nav bar. Well, they've used user.identity.getUsername. That returns the name. Yes, Alex.
From usability perspective, wouldn't it be better if they had the index visible for people that are not authenticated? Because right now they have details, but they have no way to get to the details.
Good question. They do through the store link, right? If we go to store, we built this out in the beginning so they can see the list of albums this way, right? So this is similar to the index, but it's a read-only version. And we're going to add details and add to cart links on here later, probably next week. So the store manager part is for the administrators. The store part is for the customers or the shoppers. The other option, Alex, the other option would be, yes, on our store manager, we could do similar thing where we could use an if statement to determine whether or not to show the create and all the links or not. We sort of have two versions of this view. One's public and one's for administrators. Okay. So that's how we can manage figuring out, is the user logged in or not, and what are they allowed to see based on whether they're anonymous. But now we need to do the authorization piece that Alex was asking about. Because when you're a customer, when you check out, you're going to create an account. Well, the way we've set it up right now, if you have a customer account, you can log into the store manager and you can change stuff. Great, I'm going to make all my albums free before I buy them, right? Probably not great business. So we need to change a couple things in the database. So if you are using my database, you don't have to make this change. I'm going to do it. If you are working with your own database, you need to make this change with me. So you'll want to connect to your database. You can do it in Visual Studio. If you want, just click on the Server Explorer, and then there should be the option here to make a new query, which isn't working for me. So I'm using my database here. So the first thing we need to do, right now there are no roles in the database. All users are the same. So we need to insert a couple of roles into this ASP.NET roles table. So we'll just write a couple of simple inserts. So we're going to insert into ASP.NET roles if you're using my database. Two columns, ID and name. And the ID is not auto-generated. So we'll have ID1, and the name of the role is administrator. And then we'll insert a second role that we call customer. So we'll create two different roles, and then we'll take the current account we've made and we'll make those users administrators. And then we'll create a second account that is a customer account. So run these two commands. You just have to highlight them and I will execute them. And now when I query my ASP.NET roles table, I've got two roles. Role ID 1 is administrator and role ID 2 is customer. So if you're working with your own database, you want to copy those insert statements and execute them. So the next thing we're going to do is take the user account we've already created and we're going to make those users administrators. So they have access to the store manager. So we also have this table called ASP.NET user roles. And you can see there's two columns in there, a user ID and a role ID. So what user is it? And which role are they in? So right now, when I run this query, I get nothing. We're going to fix that. So we're going to insert into ASP.NET user roles, user ID and role ID. Oops. So this will take any user accounts you already have in your users table and add them to the user roles table as an administrator. Most, if you're working with your own database, you only have one user account. Because a few of you are working with my database and have accounts in my database, I'm going to make everyone in my database an administrator. So now I'm going to run this query one time. We will select all the users and add each one of them in role ID 1, meaning they're an administrator. So I'll execute that. Oops. Oh, oops, select, sorry, this is. This is ID. So all 6 of my current users are all now administrators. If I run this query again, everybody who's in my database is now in an administration role. So you only need to run those inserts one time. And again, if you're working with my database, you don't need to do anything. I've done it for you. So we now have administrative accounts. We now want to create a separate login that's a customer account. So we can try logging in first as an administrator, then as a customer, but we can control that only administrators can go into the store manager and change our products. A user with a regular account can't do that. So go back to your store and log off in your browser. Go back to register and create a customer account. So this will create another record in ASP.NET users, but this user won't be tied to the administrator role. So I've got 2 accounts now. Now, right now, our store manager says, as long as you're logged in, you can go to the store manager. We need to change this. We want it so our administrator account can go here, but our customer account should be blocked. So we're going to have to make a couple of changes to the rules we've put in here. Customers can still log in, but they shouldn't be allowed to see this page. Again, here was the... So I have 6 users in my database now. Sorry, I have 7 users. But I only have 6 users in an admin role. So my customer account is not an administrator.
How are you setting up the ID?
I created it. You mean the role ID or the user ID? I did it manually.
New one.
Oh, I didn't actually do it. They're not in any role at all, which is okay, right? If they're not in a specific role, that means they're not an administrator. So that's probably good enough. We could manually add that new user to role ID 2. We probably don't have to. So now we need to go back to our controller. Whoops, where's our store manager controller? We'll scroll back up to the top. So just saying authorize isn't enough anymore, because right now this lets anybody with an account into these pages. So inside of our authorize, we're going to add roles equals administrator. If we're allowing multiple roles, we just separate those roles with a comma. So not only do you have to be logged in, but you have to be logged in with an administrator account. So we've just added this to our authorized declaration. And if we save and build, log out as a customer and log back in, now our store manager pages should be blocked. And then we're going to have to change something in the view in the section that Daniel mentioned earlier. So I'm going to add that roles equals administrator here. We'll see what this does. So I'm going to try this both ways. I'll log out. First, I'll try my administrator account. Okay, so I can get back to the store manager. I can edit, I can add. That stuff all works fine. Now let's try our new customer account. Okay, so as a customer, I can't get in. I can get to the details. Logged in as a customer, I can get here. So this is mostly working. There's two things we should be changing here. What two things should we change? Logged in as a customer, there's a few things on this page that aren't right. What should we change? So I have a customer account, but there's stuff here that should go. Josh? Change the header so this link only shows up if the user is an administrator. What else should be changed? Daniel, I'll ask you because it kind of comes to your question from earlier. Yeah, again, these links, right? We've said as long as they're authenticated, show them those links. So we probably want to change the logic in that if statement. It's not just if they're authenticated, they have to be authenticated, but also in a administrative role in order to see edit. So we're going to kind of have the same if statement here and there. So let's change this one first because we've already opened that file. So if we go back to our details, we no longer, this check is no longer good. It's not enough to just check if the user's logged in. So I'm going to take out that is authenticated. I'm going to take out the .identity. What do you suppose we might want to use instead from our little pop-up menu? Yeah, we want to check the user is in role, which is a built-in function, the ASP.NET identity. So if the user is in an administrator role, the ASP.NET Identity automatically tracks the user's role when they log in. And a user could be in multiple roles. That's fine. In a simple authorization scheme, each user has only one role. In a more complicated one, a user could have multiple roles. So if we save that change and refresh our details view, the edit and back to list links in orange at the bottom of the page, those should go away when we're logged in as a customer. So if I refresh, still logged in as a customer, but those links disappear. We now want to add that same if statement into our layout around this link. If they're not an administrator, we don't want to show them there's the store manager section. Yeah, they can't get in, but they shouldn't even see the link. There's no point giving them links to areas they're blocked from accessing. So we're going to add this same if statement into our navigation bar. So if you don't have your layout view open, we want to open that. So inside of views and shared and layout, we've just hard coded this link in here. We want to wrap that inside of the same kind of if statement. So if our user dot is in role administrator, we have to spell it exactly the same way as we've spelled it in our database. So we'll just wrap curly braces around that link. So our store manager link only shows up if the user is logged in and they're in an administrator role. So we should be able to save that change. And if you refresh, our store manager link should go away. If we log out and log back in as an administrator, our store manager link should come back. Let's try it out. So I'm still logged in as a customer. My store manager link has disappeared now. If I log off and log back in with my admin account, my store manager link is here. So we can control both access based on whether our user is logged in or not logged in. And we can also control access to things depending on what role they are in once they log in. And the identity package makes this really easy. We've probably written 4 lines of code to do all this. 2 lines in the controller, 1 line in the view, 1 line in our layout file. Anybody have any questions so far?
Just of the query itself.
Yep.
So basically what we're doing, what we did in the query was we inserted the roles just to have a reference to them, sort of.
Yeah, we basically worked in the database so that we have 2 separate accounts with different permission levels.
Yes, and then in the second line, we made every user that is actually registered right now an administrator.
Right. And after we did that, we made a new account that is not an administrator.
Right. So for example, if we wanted it was a running database and we are just expanding it.
Okay, good question. So in a real site, yeah, we don't want to have to go in the database to put people in an administrator role, right? So here's what we would do. It would be something like this. I'd have to find my login for this. Bear with me for a second. Basically, what we would need to do is build a page, a private page, to add new administrators. I didn't want to take the time in class to build those pages, so we just created the administrators for today with an insert statement.
But could we like do insert and where the ID or username is equals, and then our username will be admin at something?
Sure. Yep, we could do that. I just inserted all of them because I have in my database, because several people in the class are using my database. Mm-hmm. So with that query, with one query, I could make everybody an administrator, whether they're 6, 20, 600. Okay. But normally we would have to make a page that lists all the administrators, and we could create new administrators. I wanted to skip that step. So we just went into the database and made ourselves administrators for today. So our local authentication, it's actually done. We could control access to any other areas with that simple authorized command, and then any if statements in our views that we wanted to use for showing or hiding different content. Josh?
How would we do it so that there would be like a call role?
Okay, good question. So what we would have to do in that case is we'd have to go into the account controller that got automatically added to our project when we chose that. If we have a look here, we would have to go to the HTTP post register method. So this is what this actually creates the new user and adds them to the ASP.NET users table. So we would need to add we need to modify this. We would leave what's here, but we would need to add some code to then insert them into the user roles table. We'd have to get their new ID from the users table and add them to user roles with the role ID that we wanted. So it doesn't do that automatically. That would be up to us to manually do. Actually, I could probably show you something of what that looks like, because we did it here. But here's our account controller. Right, so a lot of this code is the same, but we've added, if they picked instructor, so we did some checking about their role, and after, so this new application user, this line is what actually saves them to the database, right? Create a new user, save them to the database. After that, adding them to a role and saving that, as well as sending a confirmation email. So this method is just a starting point, right? Like we don't have any kind of confirmation email, so we can add any additional functionality that we want that should happen when a user account's created. But that part you have to do yourself. You have to do it manually, whether it's sending an email, adding them to a role, etc. So that's kind of, we take that as the base, and then we add on any custom code, anything else that should happen besides just creating an account. We'd have to do it ourselves. We'll probably skip this stuff just in the interest of time. Okay, it's about time for us to have a break. So we'll take a 10-minute break. We're going to do a few things when we come back. We should have time to do. The first thing we're going to do is spend 5 minutes talking about and enabling SSL. The second thing we're going to do is try and get Google authentication working. So not only can you register through here and through the database, but you have the option to sign up with a Google account as well. Okay. We should be able to get that working before the end of class today. So we'll take a 10-minute break. I will come have a look.